Here's what's going viral right now: a wedding bill. Watch it move. 3 million, 26 million, 2.2 billion. July 3rd, 2026. Madison Square Garden. Roughly 1,000 guests watch two of the most famous people on earth get married. Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. One ceremony, one night, officiated verifiably by Adam Sandler. That part isn't the strange part. The strange part is what the money did. Because this wasn't just a wedding. It was a measurable economic event. Within 48 hours, 3 fashion houses gained $26.7 million in measurable media value, without buying a single ad. Days before the ceremony, the couple's team confirmed $26 million in donations, rivaling the estimated cost of the party itself. And the Knot projects the ripple, $2.2 billion in new wedding spending worldwide, $1.8 billion in America. One private party moving billions raises exactly 3 questions. Who paid? Who got paid? And who walks away with the profit? Over the next 18 minutes, we follow every dollar verified and labeled. This is the wedding that moved $2 billion. Start where every wedding starts. The bill. And this bill begins with one of the most famous buildings in America. Madison Square Garden. 20,000 seats, home to basketball, hockey, and history. And now, one Friday night in July, a wedding. First round of Guess the Number. What does it cost to rent Madison Square Garden for a single private night? Lock it in. Roughly $1 million per night, at full private event rates. And a wedding this size doesn't need one night. It books 3, maybe 4 days to build the room, a rehearsal night, the wedding, then tear down by Saturday evening. Setup, event, strike, call it $3 million before a single flower, plate, or note of music enters the building. Now layer the production. A 1,000-guest event inside an arena is closer to staging a concert than hosting a dinner. Event planners interviewed that week put full production, staging, lighting, sound, catering, florals, comfortably into 8 figures. That's analysis, not receipts. Who gets paid by that bill? Not celebrities, riggers, florists, caterers, sound engineers, security staff, drivers, dishwashers, hundreds of working New Yorkers. Permit filings tell the logistics story. Crews loading food and scenery for days on either side, and loadout running through Saturday. Then there's the guest list itself, roughly 1,000 people, many arriving from out of state into midtown hotels on a holiday weekend. July 3rd, 2026 was the Friday before Independence Day. Manhattan hotels were already heading into one of their busiest weekends. Keep that detail. It matters later when we ask whether this wedding created new spending or absorbed spending that already existed. Security is its own line item. A guest list at this level of fame draws crowds the size of a protest. Outside the private bill, the NYPD assigned roughly 130 officers a day around the garden for the wedding events. Who pays for those officers? Not the couple, at least not directly. Hold that thread. It becomes its own chapter. So tally the private bill: venue, production, vendors, private security, travel. The total lands into the 20 to 30 million range by press estimates. For scale, the average American wedding costs about $34,000. This one cost at least 600 of them. A party in the tens of millions sounds like the height of excess, which makes what the couple did next genuinely hard to explain. One day before the wedding, the couple's publicist confirmed it. $26 million, going to 20 organizations. Read that against Chapter 1. The give matched the party. 26 million donated, against a bill estimated at 20 to 30 million. Where did it go? Food banks, music education programs, a children's hospital, children's literacy, community service groups, and animal welfare. The pattern: food security, music education, kids' health and home ground, Pennsylvania, Missouri, Tennessee, Rhode Island, and above all New York. $26 million is real money by any measure. But the more interesting question is the one nobody asked. Why confirm it? Here's the analysis clearly labeled. Celebrity philanthropy at this scale does 2 jobs at once: real charity and real reputation management. A billion-dollar public image has one structural risk: excess. A $26 million give, timed to the party, neutralizes that story instantly. PR strategists call this an offset play. The bigger the spectacle, the bigger the give, announced close enough to share a headline. Is that cynical? Maybe. So let's be precise about what's verified and what isn't, because the money is real either way. Verified. The amount, the recipient count, and the timing, announced July 2nd, confirmed by the couple's publicist, reported nationwide. Analysis, the motive. We cannot verify why anyone gives. We can only verify what the giving does, and what it did was measurable. Because here's what a $26 million gift does to 20 organizations, large and small. For some, it rewrites their entire year. Spread evenly, that's over $1 million each. Nearly 9 in 10 American nonprofits spend less than $500,000 a year. Follow the dollar through one example. A food bank receives a 7-figure check. What happens next is economics, not sentiment. Food banks convert dollars at scale. Bulk purchasing turns one donated dollar into several dollars of retail value food. The multiplier is real. Multiply that across 20 organizations, and the gift side of this wedding starts generating its own quiet, unphotographed economy. There's precedent. During the Eras tour, Swift gave bonuses totaling $55 million to tour staff, including every truck driver. So a pattern exists: enormous revenue events, followed by enormous distributions. The wedding fits a documented behavior, not a one-off stunt. Now hold both chapters. Private bill, 20 to 30 million, by press estimates. Donations, 26 million, call it 50 million out. Roughly $50 million out the door, for one night. By every rule of accounting, this wedding was a massive net loss. And yet, by the time the last guest left, the numbers were already flowing the other way, toward the brands. Because 3 fashion houses were about to make $26.7 million in 48 hours, without spending anything at all. Welcome back. To understand what happened next, you need one metric, the strangest currency in the fashion industry. It's called Media Impact Value, MIV, a dollar figure assigned to every post, photo, and headline a brand appears in. Think of it as advertising math in reverse. Instead of paying for attention, you measure the attention you got in dollars. WWD ran the numbers on the wedding. In the first 48 hours, 3 brands generated $26.7 million in MIV. Round 2 of Guess the Number. Of that $26.7 million, how much did the wedding gown alone generate? Lock it in. $15 million. One dress, one house, Dior, capturing more than half the entire measured value of the event. The jewelry house, Cartier, measured $5.9 million. The shoemaker, Louboutin, $5.8. Together, $26.7. Now ask the follow-the-dollar question. What did those 3 houses pay for placement at the most photographed wedding on Earth? Publicly, nothing is confirmed. Couture at this level is typically gifted or custom commissioned. The transaction is access, not cash. Compare that to buying the same attention. A single Super Bowl 30-second spot costs roughly $8 million for one ad. $15 million in measured value for the cost of one dress is the best marketing trade in fashion this year, by far. But MIV is the surface. The deeper money is in what retail analysts call the halo, and it started within hours. Search traffic for the gown's silhouette, the ring's cut, and bridal styles spiked globally before the ceremony had even ended. There's hard precedent here. When the couple got engaged in 2025, searches for the ring's antique cut surged overnight. Jewelers reported customers asking for old mine cuts by name, a style that had spent a century out of fashion. That's the fandom mechanism in miniature. One photograph converts into millions of purchase decisions without a single dollar of paid media. Now scale the mechanism to a wedding. Every category she touched, gowns, veils, shoes, jewelry, has a dupe economy waiting. Fast fashion replicas of celebrity dresses typically hit online retailers within 2 to 4 weeks. The supply chain is built for this. Dior captures the prestige. The replica industry captures the volume. Both are monetizing the same 48 hours of attention. The bridal industry itself is enormous. American weddings alone move roughly $70 billion a year through 2 million ceremonies. Bridal is also a trend monoculture. One royal or celebrity wedding can redirect years of style spending across the entire market. It happened before. After the 2018 royal wedding, minimalist gowns swept bridal fashion for years. Industry press documented the shift. If even a fraction of 2 million annual brides shift toward this wedding's look, the redirected spending reaches hundreds of millions. And notice the symmetry the ledger produced. The couple gave away 26 million. The brands measured 26.7 million, gained. And the halo is still the small number. The big one, 2.2 billion, needs a whole different map. $2.2 billion. Before we trace it, let's be honest about what kind of number it is. It's a projection, the Knott's estimate of new wedding spending over 2 years, made at the engagement, re-cited after the ceremony. The breakdown, 1.8 billion inside the United States, the rest from couples worldwide, on jewelry, attire, travel, and honeymoons. Projections like this deserve skepticism. We said so in our World Cup film. So let's stress test it against verified history. Because this couple comes with something almost no wedding has, a documented, federally noticed track record of moving economies. 2023, the Eras Tour. The Federal Reserve itself noted the tour's impact on hotel revenue in its official beige book. That's not a fan blog. That's the American Central Bank, documenting one musician's tour as a measurable regional economic force. Research firms estimated Eras-related consumer spending near $5 billion in the United States, more than some countries' tourism sectors. Economists gave the phenomenon a name, the Swift lift. Cities began competing for tour dates the way they compete for factories. The other half of this wedding brought his own dataset. When the relationship went public in 2023, his jersey sales spiked. Nearly 400% in one weekend. Sales outlets reported it among the top 5 NFL jerseys sold overnight. By January 2024, one analytics firm valued her effect on the team and league brand at $331 million. So the 2.2 billion projection isn't conjured from nothing. It extrapolates a documented pattern. This fandom converts attention into transactions. Where would the 2.2 billion actually land? Follow the categories one by one, starting with the city itself. Tourism first. The Garden is now a pilgrimage site. Fans already travel for tour venues. Wedding venues carry stronger gravity. Analysts projected Manhattan hotel occupancy near 98% for the window, a holiday weekend, with a wedding stacked on top. Merchandise second, official and not. Unofficial wedding merch appeared on print-on-demand platforms within hours. None of it pays the couple. Media third. Every outlet covering this, magazines, podcasts, streaming specials, this film, is monetizing the same event. Attention is inventory. Fourth, the copycat economy. Bridal, jewelry, venues, even arena weddings themselves, vendors reprice against the new reference point at the top. That last one cuts both ways. When the ceiling rises, average wedding costs drift upward, and ordinary couples absorb the drift. Add it up and 2.2 billion stops sounding impossible, and starts sounding like a conservative reading of a repeatable pattern. But one group in this story never volunteered to participate, and their bill arrived anyway. The taxpayers of New York City. Welcome back. Every private spectacle in a public city leaves a public bill. This chapter counts it, both sides, no thumb on the scale. Outside the private bill, the NYPD assigned roughly 130 officers a day around the Garden for the wedding events. Street closures ran along 7th and 8th Avenues. Barriers, traffic posts, crowd control, Midtown Manhattan, on a holiday Friday night. And there's a complication unique to this venue. Madison Square Garden sits directly on top of Penn Station itself. Penn Station moves around 600,000 passengers a day, the busiest transit hub in the Western Hemisphere, underneath the party. Final round of guess the number. The reported public cost of policing this wedding, the floor, not the ceiling. Lock it in. $160,000. That's the reported minimum staffing math from police schedules obtained by the New York Times. But the New York Times reported the true total could exceed $1 million once full overtime and logistics are counted. So the public tab sits somewhere between two numbers, 160,000 reported, and a possible 1 million plus. Who covers it? The city budget, which means ultimately New York taxpayers, most of whom were not on the guest list. Now, the case against outrage because it's substantial. New York polices large private events constantly. Premieres, galas, parades, championship celebrations. The Met Gala gets NYPD protection every single year. So do film premieres and billionaire birthdays. This wedding isn't an exception, it's policy. And the city side of the ledger isn't empty. Hotel taxes, sales taxes, and a tourism halo that outlasts the weekend. If the projections hold, New York's tax take from wedding tourism alone likely exceeds the policing bill many times over. The counter-argument: taxes from tourism are diffuse and delayed. Police overtime is concrete and immediate. One is a projection, one is a payroll. There's also the July 4th problem from Chapter 1. That weekend was already sold out. Some wedding spending simply displaced existing spending. That's substitution, the same mechanism economists flagged in our World Cup investigation. Gross numbers dazzle. Net numbers shrink. Every time. So the honest public tab verdict is unsatisfying. Reported costs are modest, claimed benefits are large, and both carry asterisks. What isn't settled? The bill. City Hall hasn't said whether anyone will be charged, and no reimbursement has been announced. Which leaves the final question, the one this whole film has been building toward. What exactly is a fandom worth? Welcome back. Strip away the tool and the headlines, and this story is about a new kind of market force. Call it fandom economics, millions of people whose attention converts to spending faster and more reliably than almost any advertising channel. The evidence trail we've verified: a central bank citation, a $5 billion tour, a 400% jersey spike, a $26 million MIV weekend. The verdict: clearly labeled analysis. This wedding wasn't an economic event because it was expensive. Money followed because attention led. That inverts the old marketing equation. Brands used to buy attention with money. Fandoms generate money out of attention at will. It also explains the donations. In an attention economy, generosity is not just virtue. It's the highest yield story you can publish. None of that makes the giving fake, the dress cynical, or the fans manipulated. It makes all of it measurable. So, final answers. Who paid? The couple roughly $50 million out. Taxpayers? A six-figure floor. Fans voluntarily in billions of small transactions. Who got paid? Vendors and crews. 20 charities. 3 fashion houses. Hotels, airlines, jewelers, replica factories, and every outlet covering it. Who profits? Measured in dollars. The brands. Measured in equity. A fandom that just demonstrated it can move markets on demand. Play the counter from our opening one last time. 3 million, the venue. 26 million, the give. 2.2 billion, the wave. One private ceremony functioned as fiscal stimulus, brand campaign, and philanthropy program simultaneously, with no government and no advertising budget involved. The open questions ride forward: the final public cost audit, the 2-year impact numbers, and whether the bridal wave actually materializes. We'll follow those dollars when the real numbers land, because attention economies don't end when the confetti is swept up. If you want the biggest money story of the summer, watch our World Cup investigation next, $13 billion, fully traced. And if this breakdown earned it, subscribe. We follow the money behind the biggest stories, verified and labeled, every single week. Every source in this film is dated on screen and linked below. Read them. Check us. That's the point. This is the viral feed.